Hello guys, hello friends, hello G's, it's your boy again, Falling with a Star. So guys, today I want us to look at this topic called connective tissues. We all know that cells come together to form tissues, right? And tissues come together to form what? Organs, and so on. But when you take the human body is being made up of four basic types of tissues. And the first one I want us to talk about is the epithelial tissue. When you take the epithelial tissue, what they do is that they form the covering of the body surfaces. When you take your skin, the uppermost layer is being made up of these tissues called the epithelial tissue. The epithelial tissue, they also line body cavities like the pleural cavity, where you can find your lungs. All these cavities are being lined by the epithelial tissue. The cardiac cavities, they are all being lined by these tissues we call the epithelial tissues. These epithelial tissues can also form glands. They can also form glands. So let's move to the next tissue, which is the nerve tissue. For the nerve tissue, they can be stimulated, and whenever they get stimulated, what they do is that they become excited and fire an action potential. So they are stimulatory and also excitable. The next tissue that I'll talk about is the muscle tissue. For the muscle tissue, they can contract and bring about movement. So all the movements that you can do is by the help of this tissue called the muscle tissue. So the last tissue that I'm going to talk about, the fourth one, is the one going to connect all these tissues, you understand? And that tissue is what we call the connective tissue. So connective tissue going to connect all these tissues. For instance, when you take your skin, the uppermost layer is being made up of the epithelial tissue, followed by the connective tissue, and followed by the muscle tissue. So the connective tissue is actually connecting the epithelial tissue and the muscle tissue. So for the connective tissue, they connect these tissues together. And another function of this connective tissue is that when you take the bone is an example of connective tissue, and the bones they form the framework of the body. You understand? So connective tissues, they form the framework of the body. Blood is also an example of connective tissue, and blood transports substances in the body. So connective tissue transports substances in the body. The adipocytes, what they do is that they store fats, and adipocytes is also an example of connective tissue. So when you take the macrophages, an example of connective tissue, and what they do is that they act as a phagocyte. So they phagocytize foreign substances like the pathogens in our body. You understand? So in other ways, they help protect the body. So all these contribute to the functions of the connective tissue. So now let's look at some facts about connective tissue. The connective tissue is the most abundant tissue in the body. So the most abundant tissue in the body is the connective tissue. And also the connective tissue developed from the mesoderm. So they develop from the mesoderm. You see, we have the germ layer. When you take the germ layers, we have the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. The nerve tissues, they develop from the ectoderm. The muscle tissue, they develop from the mesoderm. And the epithelial tissue, they develop from ectoderm and endoderm. And the connective tissue that we are talking about, they develop from mesoderm. You understand? Another thing about connective tissue is that they are highly vascular. They have abundant supply of blood vessels, except the cartilage, which is avascular, doesn't have blood vessels. And also when you take the tendons, they have sparse blood vessels. You understand? So these are some facts about connective tissue. So now guys, I want us to look at the components of the connective tissue. The components of the connective tissue, things that make the connective tissue. The things that make this connective tissue, we have two. We have the cells, and the other things apart from the cells is called the extracellular matrix. So the two main components are cells and extracellular matrix. And when you take the extracellular matrix, it is being divided into two. We have the fibers and the ground substance. The fibers and the ground substance together form the extracellular matrix. So the components are the cells and the extracellular matrix. I learned this from a certain lecturer on YouTube, and his scenario was very good. So I want to use that scenario to explain the components of the connective tissue. You see, let's take the connective tissue as a jungle. So when you look at the jungle, you see that this is the ground, You understand? This is the ground. So the ground here represent the what? The ground substances. You understand? And for the ground, we have three varieties. So we have three varieties of the what? The ground substances. We have the glycosaminoglycan, we have the proteoglycans, and we have the glycoproteins. So the glycosaminoglycans, the proteoglycans, and the glycoproteins forms what? The varieties of what? The ground substance. And you see these trees here. Some are thick, some are thin, some are branched. You understand? So these represent what? The fibers. So for the trees, we have this one which is very thick and unbranched. So this is the collagen fiber. You understand? And we have this one, it is thin and unbranched. So this is the elastic fiber. So the elastic fibers, they are thin and what? Unbranched. And this is the last one, which is very thin and branched. This is what? The reticular fibers. You understand? So these are the fibers. And these monkeys here represent the cells, which we'll look at in detail. You understand? So now let's take them one by one. So the first one, let's take the what? The ground substance. The ground substance. When you take the ground substance is a colorless gel-like material. It's a colorless gel-like material. Some people also say that it is transparent. It is transparent. And this ground substance can be fluid, semi-fluid, gelatinous, or calcified, depending on what? The connective tissue that you are looking at. When you take the bone, the ground substance is what? Calcified. When you take the blood, the ground substance is fluid. You understand? When you look under your skin, there is a loose connective tissue there. And that loose connective tissue, let's say that the dermis is what? Semi-fluid. It has what? A semi-fluid what? Ground substance. You understand? So depending on the connective tissue that you are looking at, the ground substance can either be what? Fluid, semi-fluid, gelatinous, or what? Calcified. And as I said, it contains what? Three varieties. We have the proteoglycans, we have the glycosaminoglycans, and we have the what? The glycoproteins. The proteoglycans, examples of these proteoglycans is agrican. We also have the syndecan, syndecan, syndecan. So agrican or syndecan. For you take the glycosaminoglycan, we have examples like the keratin sulfate, the dermatin sulfate, dermatin, dermatin sulfate, and we have the hyaluron. I've forgotten the pronunciation of the word. When you take the glycoproteins, example is the fibronectin and the laminin. Fibronectin and what? The laminin. So that's for the ground substance. So now let's look at the fibers. The first one we'll look at is the collagen fiber. The collagen fiber, which is very thick and what? Unbranched. And this collagen fiber is actually made up of the protein called collagen. And this protein is being secreted by a certain cell we call fibroblast. Let me write it here, fibroblast. We'll look at this later, fibroblast. So this cell, they secrete this what? Collagen molecules. These collagen molecules will come together to form what? These collagen fibers. And these collagen fibers will come together to form what? Collagen what? Fibers. You understand? Collagen fibers. So, and these collagen fibers, we have so many types. We have about 28 different types of what? These collagen fibers, but we look at only the first four. So the first collagen fiber is very thick, and you can find it in what? In bones. You understand? So you can find it in bones, ligaments, and tendons. So when you take bones, ligaments, and tendons, you can find what? Collagen type 1. When you look at your ear, there is a certain cartilage there called the elastic cartilage, and this elastic cartilage contains the collagen fiber type 2. And when you take your long bones like the humerus, when you look at the ends of the bones, they are being covered by this cartilage called the hyaline cartilage. And this hyaline cartilage, they also contain what? Collagen type 2. And we have collagen type 3. Another name for collagen type 3 is what? Reticular fibers. So reticular fibers, they contain what? Collagen type 3. You understand? And this collagen type 3 can be found in the liver. So when you take the liver, you can find what? Collagen type 3. And also the lymphoid organs, you can find what? Collagen type 3. So let's look at the last fiber, which is reticular fibers. As I said, they are also called collagen type 3. And when you take the reticular fibers, they are branched. You understand? They are very thin and branched. And as I said, they contain collagen type 3. And because they are branched, they also form meshwork. They form meshwork. You understand? And they can be found in the liver, the lymphatic tissue, and also endothelium. Endothelium, that means within the blood vessels. And one thing about these reticular fibers is that they are angiophilic because they stain black with silver spots. They stain black with silver spots. So they are angiophilic. Let's look at the last one. I said at the last one, right? Sorry. So let's look at the last one here, which is the elastic fibers. For the elastic fibers, they are very thin, but they are unbranched. They are not branched like the reticular fibers. And for the elastic fibers, they are being produced by fibroblasts and also smooth muscles. They are being produced by fibroblasts and smooth muscles. I said that the collagen fibers, they are being produced by fibroblasts. There's only the reticular fibers that is not produced by fibroblasts. So for the elastic fibers, they are being produced by fibroblasts and smooth muscle cells. And they are being made up of the protein called elastin. They are being made up of the protein called elastin, and they can be found in the ligamentar flava of the vertebral column. Ligamentar flava of the vertebral column. They can also be found in the vocal cords of the larynx. The vocal cord of the larynx. And these elastic fibers, they allow tissues to respond to stretch. You understand? They allow tissues to respond to stretch. So when you take the elastic fibers, any organ that contains more elastic fibers can respond to stretch. You understand? So guys, we've talked about the fibers and the ground substance. So now let's look at the cells, the connective tissue cells. For the connective tissue cells, we have two main types. We have those that are fixed, also called residential cells, and we have those that are movable, called the transient or the wandering cells. Understand? So we have two types: the fixed or residential cells, and those that are movable, called the transient or the wandering cells. So let's look at examples of the fixed or residential cells. We have the fibroblasts. We'll take them one by one. We have the fibroblasts, we have the macrophages, the adipocytes, the mast cells, and the adult stem cells. These are examples of the residential or fixed cells: the fibroblasts, macrophages, adipocytes, mast cells, and adult stem cells. We also have the transient or the wandering cells, which is movable. Examples of these wandering cells are the monocytes, the neutrophils, the eosinophils, the basophils, and the lymphocytes. All these comes together to form the white blood cells. You understand? All these comes together to form the white blood cells. And the white blood cells, they are movable. You understand? They have immune function. You understand? Helping the body or protecting the body against pathogens or foreign substances. So let's take them one by one. We have the fibroblasts. So this how the fibroblasts, how they look like. This is just a drawing. And the fibroblasts, they are the most abundant cell type. So the abundant cell type in the body is the fibroblasts. And these fibroblasts, they secrete collagen molecules, as I talked about it. And these collagen molecules, they will come together to form collagen fibrils. And these collagen fibrils will come together to form collagen fibers. Collagen fibers. Some people will also say that these fibroblasts, they secrete extracellular matrix. They secrete extracellular matrix. So now let's move to the next cell. The next cell that we talk about is the adipocytes. For the adipocytes, they store fats, and we have two types of the adipocytes. We have one which is unilocular. For the unilocular, they have one large fat droplet which actually push the nucleus to the periphery of the cell. And we have the multilocular. For the multilocular, they have many small fat droplets. You understand? Let's move to the next cell, which is the mast cell. For the mast cell, they are actually being produced in the bone marrow by a certain stem cell, which we call the myeloid. Let me write it here. The myeloid stem cell. So these mast cells, they are being produced in the bone marrow by these stem cells called what? The myeloid stem cells. And these mast cells, they contain many of these granules called what? The basophilic granules. And these basophilic granules, they actually secrete two things: the histamine and the heparin. Histamine and heparin. And histamine helps to dilate blood vessels as part of what? Their inflammatory response. So they help dilate blood vessels as part of what? Their inflammatory response. And they also secrete heparin. Heparin is an anticoagulant. Anticoagulant helps prevent blood from what? Clotting. You understand? Let's look at the last one, which is what? The macrophage cell. The macrophage cell. They're being produced, or they develop from what? Monocytes. They develop from what? Monocytes, which is an example of what? White blood cell. And they are phagocytic. So they phagocytize what? Pathogens in the body or foreign substances in the body. So that's it for the cells. So we will look at part 2, which we will talk about the classification of what? Connective tissues. Thank you.